Carl Frank, president of A&I Financial. It's a pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Ryan Bertrand from Transamerica will teach us all about Medicare. You know, preparing and saving for healthcare costs and retirement's never been more important. We were just talking just a few minutes ago about what does Medicare pay for, what doesn't it pay for. I think we hear lots of rumors and stories. Hey, how are you? So glad you made it. That Medicare does pay for this or Medicare doesn't pay for that. Or some people are saying they have great experiences. Other people are saying, oh my gosh, I had a horrible experience. So we're going to weed through all of the rumors and give you the facts about it and help you make good decisions with Medicare. So thank you for joining us. A little bit about Ryan. Ryan's been with Transamerica for a number of years. He's been, prior to joining Transamerica, Advanced Markets. Ryan was with Jackson for over a decade. Ryan just let us know he is currently living in my hometown, Evergreen. And he's got a couple of newborn babies at home. He had twins. They're only 5 months old. So, right? I know. So we ought to have baby pictures on the screen instead of just the fish that we started with today. So that's super exciting. Really proud of you. Congratulations to your wife. And our second speaker will be Tom. Tom will come up at the end and answer any questions. Tom Crennan is a gentleman we've worked with for years. He is our Medicare expert. We've known Tom for a long time. Tom founded ColoradoHealth.com. He created this website. It was the first instant quoting health insurance website. It started way back in 1996. So that's pretty cool. And Tom is also the creator of ICH RA Systems. It's a new type of group health insurance that uses individual policy. Tom is an inventor as well as a business owner and a friend and advisor for many work. So I think you'll enjoy both Ryan and Tom. Without further ado, I'll hand it off to Ryan Bertrand. Thanks, Ryan.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much, Carl. Thanks for having me. Thank you. My name is Ryan Bertrand. I'm Vice President and Managing Director of the Advanced Markets Group at Transamerica. Anytime I say advanced markets, people kind of glaze over because they have no idea what advanced markets really is, what we do on a day-to-day basis. So we're a group of subject matter experts. We deal in everything financial planning oriented. So anytime anyone has weird questions, they usually come to us. But one of the things we focus on is retirement planning and longevity. Longevity, I think, is extremely important for the conversation we're going to have today because this presentation overviews Medicare. And Medicare is something you think we would all have a good rooting in because it encapsulates such a large portion of our life. But really, when you look at the expertise that we're given and how much we have to know ourselves when we're going to make the decision, it's actually not something we focus on quite a bit. So we see people make a lot of mistakes. And the reason those mistakes are a problem is because of the amount of time that you generally have to live with those mistakes is potentially significant. And we've changed drastically as a society over the last 100 years, even the last 25 years. We have this situation where we have a convergence of technology and aging that are rapidly changing our society. To put this into perspective a little bit, you go back to day one. So think of the caveman, the first human being. What do you think life expectancy was going back to day one to today on average?
It's grown a lot.
It's grown significant. 29. Over the course of human history, 29 was the average life expectancy. I always like to think about this, and it's really silly, in terms of celebrities. 29-year-old celebrities, that's Justin Bieber. So Justin Bieber was a senior citizen over the entire spectrum of our history. Now you come to modern times. In modern times, we've seen longevity change drastically. You go back 100 years, previous pandemic. So think of Spanish influenza, 1918. What do you think life expectancy was in 1918? So again, 29, going back to day one, go to 1918. What do you think it jumped to in 1918? Really close to 40. 47. 47 was life expectancy in 1918. So that's DJ Khaled, that's Reese Witherspoon, and Luke Bryan, the country music star. So those were the senior citizens back in 1918. But you think about how quickly that's changed. To today, 1918, that really wasn't on the whole spectrum of our history that long ago. But all of a sudden, we've had this revolution where 47 is nowhere near the end of our life expectancy. When we go to retire, hitting that 65 mark, which I think everyone has emblematic in their mind because that's when you're signing up for Social Security, that's when you're enrolling in Medicare and making all these monumental decisions that you're going to be living with for 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years because that spectrum of life expectancy is very open-ended. I remember in 2015, Time Magazine, and maybe you saw the Time Magazine issue. It was February 2015. On that Time Magazine issue, there was a really cute baby. And they were making a proclamation in that Time magazine issue because they were trying to say that baby's on planet Earth today, and that baby is going to live to age 142. Not to be outdone, the Wall Street Journal the next week took task with Time magazine. They said, hogwash. It's not age 142, it's 150. There's a guy in Palo Alto, a Stanford professor, so the Ivy League. He maintains there's someone on Earth today that's going to live to age 200. So you think about the decisions we make as we go into retirement and not having income production from roughly 65 to, for most people, it's probably around 100. But thinking about 142, 150, 200, that's a completely different ballgame. And we have to make the right choices as we're heading into it because we are going to live with them for a long time for the most part. A lot of people underestimate their life expectancy. So I always try to break my record anytime I'm talking to a new audience. And I like to ask a question about how old the oldest person you know is. So if you know someone who's 85 years or older, put your hand up. If it's 90, keep it up. How about 95? How about 100? 105? How old?
107 and a half.
107 and a half. Wow.
She knows.
That's pretty incredible.
She knows.
So what's interesting, though, is I ask this question to thousands of people across the country. And what I find is when I'm looking around the room at age 95, at age 100, I find that more than half of the audience still has their hand up. And you were no different. 95, 100, most of you still had your hand up. My record I've tied on 3 separate occasions. Once in Richmond, Virginia, twice in Southern California, 113 years old. 113 years old. So this idea of longevity is changing our society and will continue to do so. And this presentation to me is making the right decisions because financially we have to be prepared for this. And the health side of it is a big equation. Now, I will also say that if you buy into the fact that longevity is something that can change our society, the opposite of it also has to be something we think about. It has to be something that you think about from your own experience. And I always think about Medicare and coupling it with the Social Security conversation because you're really making those two decisions around the same time. And I can remember my uncle talking to him when he turned age 62, because that's when most people are deciding what they should do about Social Security. And he asked me, what should I do? I know you do something in Wall Street. What do you do? He had no idea what I did. It's farthest from Wall Street as you could possibly get. But we had the conversation about whether he should file for Social Security. And I told him, no, you shouldn't file for Social Security at age 60. Or no, you should, because his lifestyle was something which did not lend to having a long life. Turned out, by taking it at age 62, and we all know those people, you're not going to make it that long. And that's exactly what happened with him. He passed away when he was 66 years old. If he would have just waited, which a lot of people say to do, he wouldn't have got a dime from Social Security. So it's very personal. It's something you have to understand your own circumstance, your own lifestyle. Just with Medicare, same thing. The way that you live your life, your lifestyle should try and drive how you make this decision and what you do with your healthcare decisions. And being prepared is certainly a facet of it, but there's a lot of nuance to this. We are not prepared to have this conversation usually with individuals in the public because there isn't an emphasis put on education in this area. Walter Cronkite had a great quote around this. He said, the American healthcare system is neither healthy, caring, nor a system. And I think he got it spot on because you start to understand this. It's something that is very foreign to many people. We have an idea of what it looks like when we're employed, but when it comes time to navigate and go through all of this stuff when you're reaching age 65 or retiring, it can be something that's difficult to understand unless you have some background in it or someone to walk you through it. Because those nuances make all the difference. And even you go back to the program of Medicare. Medicare is basically your health insurance for retired people or people that aren't working who are age 65. But when it was first launched in 1965, it was only supposed to cover 51% of your healthcare needs. So you think about that. That means 49% of your needs are not taken into consideration whatsoever. You have to fend for yourself to do that. So as this system has changed over time, what they've done is introduce new options. These new options make the system far more complicated. You have choices to make. Anytime you interject a choice, if you don't understand that choice, it could come back to bite you. So Medicare is the exact same thing. We now have all these different choices, and a lot of people make their decisions based on the wrong things, whether it be preconceived bias, which is something we see done quite a bit. It's just arbitrary. I feel this way because of variable X versus variable Y. So you make the wrong choice. This presentation to me is about making the right decisions, or at least giving you the ammunition to guide you in what you might think is the right decision. And then also the other side of it is this is something that is expensive, so it's worthy to prepare for. So we're going to talk about Medicare, going to overview what the system is. We're also going to talk about the costs that are expected as we move through retirement. Selecting the best coverage to me is a big component to this because it's something that there is some expertise necessary to choose the right thing for you in your specific situation, and where we see people make the biggest mistakes. And then the enrollment side of it is another one, because many people don't understand when to enroll, or they miss the deadline to enroll and they end up with penalties. So we're really just trying to avoid that when we get to that section. But Medicare is different than our typical employer-sponsored healthcare when we enter retirement, but it's not all that different. The components of it and the way that it works should look and breathe and smell similar to what we're used to. And by that, what I mean is you have similar expenses. You're going to have a deductible. You're going to have premiums that you're going to pay on an ongoing basis to have access to it. And then you're also going to have to share in the cost through a copay or co-insurance. Depending on the flavor that you sign up for, these three variables can change fairly drastically and will dictate your underlying cost structure. Like anything else, it's relative to what you get. So as we go through the selecting your best coverage, we'll kind of flesh out what you're giving up and what you're trading in for having your type that fits you the best. It's also different than the other aspects of our retirement system. If you look at the American retirement system, there's some commonalities that we see across programs. Social Security, you have to include your spouse. You look at your 401k, you can't change the beneficiary on your 401k unless your spouse signs off. So there are attributes that are family oriented in most of our institutions in our retirement system. However, when we get to Medicare, it's completely disjointed. It works different than those other institutions because there is no consideration really for spouses. It's an individual program. You each sign up when the time comes to your individual situation. Not a lot of interplay between the spouse. What we end up seeing is because of that dynamic, you can leave your spouse in the cold when it comes to healthcare coverage. And I think I look at my parents and they're a perfect example of this because they have a 5-year age gap. So when my dad was signing up for Medicare, my mom wasn't old enough to sign up for Medicare. So when he switched over and they lost their employer coverage, she basically didn't have coverage. She had to go out and get a private policy to provide healthcare coverage. And that's a situation we see a lot. If you have a marital situation where one's older, one's providing the healthcare coverage, they retire, you have to make sure you take care of the younger spouse to ensure that there's healthcare coverage there. Now, what that means today is going out into the private market, or you have an extended period of time for COBRA coverage in that circumstance through your employer. But has anyone here ever had experience with COBRA? What's your experience with it if you have? Lousy and expensive. Because a lot of people don't understand about our healthcare system, especially while you're working, is you're generally not paying most of the premium. The person that's paying most of the premium is your employer. You look at the averages, it's about $22,000 per year for healthcare in the United States. You want to guess how much the employee actually pays of that on average? Close, $5,000. So $16,000, $17,000 is being footed by the employer. You take that employer out of the mix, and all of a sudden you have to get healthcare for your spouse because you're retiring. It can be very expensive to do. So taking that into consideration, that's why being prepared for it at that point in time, understanding if there is a disjointing in ages, that you may have an increase in your costs for it, or your cash flow and accounting for it and budgeting for it becomes extremely important. Now, the one aspect where there is some commonality between spouses is you can have one spouse qualify for Part A premium for free based on the opposing spouse's record. So we'll talk about that a little bit. It might seem foreign as I talk about it right now, but Medicare comes in two different flavors. And I think these circle diagrams do a pretty good job of laying it out. So these are your two broad choices. You have this first top line, and this first top line is called Original Medicare. So in 1965, when this was first brought out, and President Truman, being the first recipient of Medicare, signed up, he was signing up for this, Original Medicare Part A and Part B. And as we move down the line and people need more covered for their healthcare expenses in retirement, we've added on these optional components. Now, between you, me, and the fence post, unless you're crazy, these are not really optional. You're signing up for both of them because if you don't sign up for them on time, you either may not have access to them or they may be egregiously expensive. Because you're going to need medicine over a long period of time in retirement. So that's going to necessitate having a prescription drug plan if you go the original Medicare route. Or if you want to cover out-of-pocket expenses, you need to make sure that you have Medigap, which is another way of saying a Medicare supplement policy. But that's the original line. That's the original Medicare. Your alternative is Medicare Advantage, which is called Part C. And Part C is just a one-stop shop. And I'll cover them in a little bit more detail right here. So Part A, that's for hospital. So Part A, you go in a hospital, it pays your hospital bills. Part B, think about that as your physician coverage, your outpatient services. When you go to the doctor, this is what would cover that, or any outpatient surgery as well. Anything outpatient is going to fall under B. Part B, prescription drug coverage, and then Medigap is covering your out-of-pocket expenses. And then the alternative is Medicare Advantage, Part C, and that's a one-stop shop commercial policy that covers many of the same attributes of original Medicare, depending on how they design that plan. So breaking this out even a little bit further, we look at Part A. So Part A is the hospital coverage. The thing about Part A is it's a little bit different because Part A, for most people, the charge is zero. So if you're insured under Social Security, you have those 40 quarters of coverage, you're getting Part A for free. Now, there are some people, whether they were in the public sector working or just didn't pay into Social Security, they may not get it for free. If you don't have those 40 quarters of coverage, there's a charge for it. And if you're in that circumstance, it's actually a pretty strict and egregious charge. 30, it's $278 a month. If you're under that, you don't have 30 hours, you're talking about over $500 per month just for Part A. But when we think about Part A, for most people, it's not something that you think about because it's a line item and it's free if you or your spouse are insured under Social Security. So it's an important one to consider. But Part B is the one that we're probably most familiar with because Medicare Part B works more like our traditional insurance and has those components that we're familiar with. It has that premium. You're going to pay a premium every single month that you have this, and it's compulsory. You don't have an option to pay it. You can't get out of it. You have to pay this premium. And on the low end, it's $164.90. It changes every year. So every year they change that lowest tier of premium, but you know you're going to be paying that premium every year. You also have a deductible, just like your health insurance. Once you get over that deductible, then insurance kicks in and it's an 80-20 plan where they're footing 80% of the cost, you're footing the 20. But that deductible is $226. And that changes every single year. Every year they move that deductible. And when they're doing the numbers from a government standpoint, that deductible is really important. From the pricing of Medicare and making sure that it's solvent, they need to have us have some skin in the game. So even though that may seem like a low dollar threshold on the front end to many of us, it actually is something that's integral in making sure that this is not a program that goes bankrupt immediately. But also your premiums change. So your premiums are based on your income. And this is something that with a little bit of planning, you may be able to soften this blow. So what happens is they want it to be a progressive system, just like our tax system. So the more money you earn in retirement, the higher your Medicare Part B premiums are going to be. And it has a fancy term to it. It's called IRMA, Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. And they look at your income from 2 years ago. And they have to look at 2 years ago. It seems weird, but as you're signing up for this, because of the way that effective dates work, you kind of have to go back 2 years. So when you're establishing your premium for 2023 and you're signing up in the fall or considering signing up in the fall, you have to have your income from 2021 dictate how much you're going to be paying for your premiums going forward. So basically what they look at is your AGI, so your income from your income tax return, plus a couple of other items of income. Tax exempt income is added into this figure. Any unearned or untaxed foreign income. And then finally, your non-taxable portion of your Social Security is added into this as well. So they'll look back 2 years and then they'll determine which bracket you fall into, and that's what you pay for your Medicare Part B. So if you have high income in retirement, you're going to be paying more for your Part B premiums. Now that does beg the question, what kind of planning can you do for this, and what if things change? Because oftentimes people's circumstances in retirement does change, and we're talking about that 2-year gap. So what we oftentimes run into, especially during the pandemic, is I was making a high amount of income. My 2021 income might have been really high or even earlier, and then all of a sudden I have a drop in income because I'm no longer working. You have a change in your life. They're predicating your high Medicare premiums off this inflated income amount, but something changed. You have this ability to lobby if that's the case. You have these pre-specified events where you can go back to Medicare and say, I'm no longer earning that much. I want relief from this, and they'll reevaluate your situation. So if you ever find yourself thinking that I'm paying a high amount of IRMA and I really don't feel like I should, that's where filling out this type of form can help quite a bit. And we did see a lot of this during the pandemic because of people's employment situations. But that work stoppage one, I think, is a big one to watch out for. And then planning for this. You do have the ability to situate your income in retirement to try and soften this blow as much as you possibly can. So there's a couple items that you can do. Postpone income from your qualified accounts, so like your IRAs, your 401ks, until you actually have to, because that income is going to drive up your AGI. And that may drive up your IRMA amount. It's a give or take situation. Tax loss harvesting. If you have a situation where you have losses and you can harvest them at the end of the year, that can drive down your AGI as well. Qualified charitable distributions, charitable giving, or QCDs from retirement accounts can help drive down that income. Also, deferring Social Security benefits, and then Roths. Roths are a big one that you see used in this circumstance a lot because Roth income is not counted in that modified adjusted gross income calculation. So some people will do Roth conversions or fund Roths going into retirement with the thought of I can tap that income if needed and not have this situation where I'm driving up my Medicare premiums. So you can see it can get complicated really quick, but bottom line, there are some things you can do if you're trying to soften this or if you find yourself in an adverse IRMA situation. Now, there's also Medicare Part D. Medicare Part D is your prescription drug coverage. And depending on the plan that you sign up for, because there's a lot of variety in Medicare Part D plans, a lot of it's driven by the type of medications you have access to. I think one really good way to judge a Medicare Part D plan is by the formulary of medicine that they're providing. So if you do have a medicine that you take on a regular basis, and maybe, for example, you have issues with the prescription or the brand name of the medication, but the generic works fine for you or vice versa, see which one is offered in the formulary. That can drive you to going to the right type of Medicare Part D plan. But just like Medicare B, Medicare D premiums have an income table, and your income is going to drive how much you're paying on your Part D. Now, also another thing about Part D premiums is they're always based on this base figure, $32.74 this year, and that changes each and every year. So if you're late in filing for that, they have a really weird way of calculating the penalty. They basically take 1% and then the amount of months that you were late in filing and then add that to this sum. So you can see it kind of gets crazy pretty quick and something that most people wouldn't think about how to calculate it. Bottom line to me is make sure you sign up for it on time so you don't have any penalties and you don't have to worry about that. But we see people miss that because they're thinking it's optional. I don't have to sign up for it. I can sign up for it later on. And then they come to find that they're paying a lot more than other people are relative to what they're getting. Also, Medigap policies. So Medigap is the final catch-all in the original Medicare. And this is that final policy that you sign up for that kicks in and covers your sundry expenses. But there's a nuance to this type as well. And this one I think is probably the most mind-numbing to me. It does come with an extra charge. You can see here Plan G, and I'll cover this here in a second. The average cost around the country is between $80 and $122. So you're going to have a pretty sizable amount if you're signing up for that type of Plan G premium. But where people get lost is you read Medicare.gov or you go to any Medicare literature, and you're going to get this table. So you can see it's got a lot going on. Basically what these are is they're standardized plans. So they're offered in every state, and they're assigned a letter, starting with A, going all the way to N. And you'll notice that there are some letters that aren't there. Also, another thing I'd point out is that some of these plans are no longer available to people that are signing up now. If you had them previously, they're Plan C and Plan F. And the reason that they're no longer available is starting in 2020, they phased them out for new enrollees because they paid that deductible. They paid the deductible for you for Part B, that $226. So if you're new, you can't sign up for it anymore. If you had it, you're grandfathered in, you can still keep it. Now, when people are evaluating these tables, just think to yourself for a second, which one of these plans might seem, just based on the boxes that are checked, to be the most attractive? What we generally find is people tend to gravitate towards the plans that check the most boxes. It makes common sense. You want to get the most out of your plan for the least amount of money that you're going to pay. The problem, though, is that these aren't necessarily priced based on the benefits. They're priced like any other insurance, and insurance is priced on how people use it. So to put this into perspective a little bit, if you're buying auto insurance and everybody that's buying the same auto insurance as you is a terrible driver and getting in wrecks every day, your premiums are going to be really high. Same thing with this. What you tend to see is G, which is the richest plan now that's available. People that have adverse medical histories tend to pile into Plan G because they see the boxes are checked, they want to use it, they do, that can drive up the premiums. Now you contrast that for people that do a little bit of homework. If you're looking at Plan G and you compare it to this one right here, Plan N, what you'll find is Plan N and Plan G, they have a lot of commonalities. In fact, the only thing that isn't checked on Plan N that's checked on Plan G is this really weird line called Part B excess charges. You might be thinking to yourself, what the heck is a Part B excess charge? All a Part B excess charge is when your doctor assigns a cost to something that disagrees with what Medicare charges for it. Most doctors don't even do that. So you may be going to a doctor that never has a Part B excess charge, but may be paying significantly more for a G plan relative to an N plan. So putting some thought into this and seeing which one's right for you, your circumstance, what does your doctor do in that scenario, can help you move to the right plan. But I would also say an important element of Medigap policies is you only have a certain period of time to sign up for them without potentially being underwritten. So what that means is I can't sign up initially in a really cheap Medigap plan. So I might say, oh, N or A, it doesn't really do a lot. It's probably the cheapest one. I'm just going to sign up for A. And then if I get sick, I'm going to switch over to plan G. But you can't really do that with Medigap because after 6 months, they can look at your health. They can say, I'm not going to let you have that plan or charge you an egregious amount for that. There are states that make them issue them. Connecticut, New York are good examples of it, but Colorado, to my knowledge, isn't one of them, and I don't know any laws on the books that are going to change that. So giving some thought initially up front, if you go with Original Medicare, as to which one of these you sign up for is worthy of some thought, because you might get trapped into it over time. So I'll move on from that one. I know it's a mind-numbing slide. But then you have Medicare Advantage. And Medicare Advantage was offered as an alternative to Original Medicare for cost control purposes. What you'll find, and a lot of people really like Advantage plans, because they're a lot cheaper as a general rule to what you'll find in Original Medicare. These are your one-stop shop. You're buying a policy from an insurance company, and they're taking everything that's in an Original Medicare, maybe even adding to it and giving you one policy. So you're not paying for the different modules, you're paying for this one policy from an insurance company. And there are some attractive aspects to it. One of the attractive aspects is the fact that you have the one-stop shop. The other attractive aspect is that you have this maximum out-of-pocket limit. You'll notice on the last slide, forgive me, I'm going to go back real quick. There are some of these plans that do have out-of-pocket limits if you do go with Original Medicare with the Medigap policy. So if that's your end-all be-all or the most important thing for you, that may gravitate you to these things. But with every Advantage plan, you do have a maximum out-of-pocket, and it's statutory set at $8,300 this year. So that can provide some cost control in the plan as well. Your prescription drug coverage is also encapsulated into this. It can be attractive from the ease of use. I'll go over some advantages and disadvantages of it as we go through the presentation, because there's some things that aren't as obvious that may dissuade you from going with an Advantage plan, and I think it's worthy of consideration. But the number one reason that people do go with it is because of costs. And I would just say in general, healthcare costs are extreme. Also a major fear of retirees. Every year they do surveys of 65-year-olds and they ask them, what are you most afraid of? And every year they always say the same two things. Healthcare costs in retirement, because they can be catastrophic. There's sticker shock with that. And then two is running out of money. I would maintain they're very interlinked. They're really driven by the same fear. But you think about the sticker shock when it comes to healthcare shock, and you don't have to be retired to have this. I can remember there was a coworker of mine and his son, this was prior to the pandemic, he had a fever. He brought him to the hospital. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning. They spent 4 hours in the hospital. Turned out he had a flu, couldn't do anything about it. They administered IVs. It was actually Skyridge over here. And he was raving about the waiting room in Skyridge and how it had a fireplace and it was just really comfortable to sit in. But then 3 weeks later, he gets the bill. So he was there for 4 hours. Do you want to guess what the bill was?
Some big number.
$12,000. Now, for 4 hours and all they're giving you is an IV, that is ludicrous. You should never pay $12,000 for one IV. Now, of course, he didn't pay that out of pocket. He had a deductible. He had health insurance through his employer. But we all have those stories where you get that emergency room bill or you have some catastrophic health issue and you see this large dollar amount and it scares us. We have collective sticker shock when it comes to this. Pharmaceuticals are another great example. The first FDA-approved treatment for Alzheimer's is a medicine called Aduhelm. And there's arguments as to whether or not it even works. Do you want to guess what 1 year of Aduhelm initially cost when they first released it? $56,000. So this was the drug that could potentially bankrupt Medicare, so they were limiting the coverage. They eventually cut the cost down to half to $26,000. It's probably around that now. I haven't checked recently, but we have that thought. We have cutting-edge cancer treatments, cutting-edge dementia treatments, Alzheimer treatments. These are charged in the tens of thousands of dollars. So this is a major thing. And then we see statistics like the one in the center here. $662,000. What this represents is the amount of money that a husband and a wife age 65 will spend just on healthcare in retirement. It's eye-popping. However, don't freak out about it. I think this is one that can be a little misleading because there's a lot buried in the statistic. One, inflation is in there. Two, it's over two people's lifetimes. So we're talking about 44 collective years between a husband and a wife, and it's a lump sum figure. You start to chip away at this, what you find, 22 years divided by 2, it's about $1,200 per person. Where do you think most people pay their health costs from when they're in retirement? Social Security. Comes right out of their Social Security check, or they've earmarked it in their budget for Social Security costs. Most people are getting over $1,200 a month for Social Security, so they may never actually see this. It's just a budgeting exercise. You need to account for it. You need to plan for it. The more you can get ahead of it, the better off you are. But it still is a very sizable figure when you look at the amount of money the average baby boomer has saved for retirement. Does anyone want to guess? So this is the demographic that's right on the doorstep of retirement. Do you want to guess what their average retirement savings are? $202,000. So it can freak people out. $202,000, and you're telling me I have $662,000 of healthcare expenses. So again, it's just making sure that you've prepared for it and you're planning for it. And then long-term care costs aren't even covered in Medicare at all, and most people, 70% of them, are going to need it at some point. So then the next step in the exercise just becomes tallying this up. Just looking at the costs, and I'll run through this part really quick because I think it's pretty obvious. Really, the only line you need to worry about, you see here, Part A. Some people pay for Part A, some people don't. But this line right here is summing it all up. So if we go with original Medicare and we look at our annual costs when we're not paying for Part A, which is going to be true for most people, we're talking about $287 per month. Now, with employer costs, you should always stack up if you have the option to continue to work past age 65, whether it's better to stay with your employer health coverage, because you don't have to sign up for Medicare if you continue to work and carry what they call creditable coverage. That's something I would always analyze. I would run the numbers. I would do that tally, see what it costs you per month versus what your employer coverage is providing. Now, of course, you have to understand what quality you're getting from your employer coverage and what they're providing for that fee, but you'd always stack those up when the time comes. Now, Medicare Advantage, that's your one-stop shop, and we look at the figure there. When we talk about how much it costs per month, it's $17.60 is the average Medicare Advantage policy, but that's also a little misleading. Because when you price these out, what you'll generally see is, oh, your Medicare Advantage plan costs $0, because a lot of them have a $0 additional charge to them. But you're always paying what you otherwise would for Part A and for Part B. That additional amount that they're showing, that $0 or $17.60 national average, is on top of what your Part B or Part A premium would otherwise be. But you can here see the difference in cost if you have Part A, Part B versus the actual premium, $17.60. And then we can put them next to each other, and you can see $287 versus $182.50. So cost, if that's your one major variable that's dictating where you want to go, that's why Advantage starts to look really attractive just based on a cost standpoint. However, cost isn't the only thing that we need to consider. It's one variable in the equation, but there are a lot of other variables in the equation that might be more important. Personal health, definitely. Whether or not you're going to travel, where you're going to live in retirement. So location-specific issues also can come in, and then the miscellaneous things. But we look at this one, personal health. Personal health, if things change over that 20, 30-year retirement, you may not be able to jump around to Medigap plans unless you're in these specific states. So New York, Connecticut, and there's some specific rules that are in Maine, California, Oregon, and Missouri. If you live in those states, that's a really important rule, but by and large for everyone else, you're making your decision, you're living with it within that first 6 months if you go with Medigap plans. But also, if you're not going with original Medicare and you have something in your situation that's important, you have special needs policies. And these are overlooked. There's even special needs policies that are an institutional class that can provide you some enhanced coverage if you're in a nursing home. But the examples would be diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer. There's all these types of special needs plans that are only offered as Advantage plans if you have that specific condition. So that may gravitate you towards Advantage. But I also think another important one is whether you're going to travel to go see your loved ones or where you're going to live in retirement. Because we know with Advantage that it's a PPO or an HMO, so you may not be able to get coverage if you're jumping around. In original Medicare, about 92% of doctors across the country all take original Medicare. So with Advantage, you have to be really careful if you're going to buy an Advantage plan and then live somewhere else, because you might find a situation where you're out of coverage or out of network. And I think that's an important thing to consider. In fact, I'd like to break this down into something that's even a little more intuitive. one of my favorite questions to ask to drive you towards one flavor or another, and I think this is the most important one. Which one does your doctor take? Because if your doctor doesn't take original Medicare, but they're part of that HMO or PPO and Advantage plan, why would you change doctors that you might have been seeing for 20, 30 years based on cost or some other preconceived bias? One that drives me crazy, and I'll talk to some people about this sometimes, and they'll say, well, I went to Advantage because I don't want nothing provided by the government. Or vice versa. I hate insurance companies. They're the devil. So I went with original Medicare because the government provides that. Very bad choice on how to make this decision because both of them have attributes that are provided by the government and insurance companies. They're hybrids, both sides. They're on equal footing. Your Medigap plan is provided by an insurance company. Prescription drug coverage is provided by the insurance company. Advantage plans, your guidelines on how those are built are provided by the government, even if the policy is provided by an insurance company. So I think the best question is which one your doctor takes. Let that be the primary way to make the decision, and those other variables can filter on down as far as having levels of complexity. But really, I think with Advantage, understand they are HMOs and they are PPOs. So if you've ever had experience with an HMO or PPO, they can be pretty restrictive as far as the network of doctors you see. So I think that has to come into the equation as you're deciding on whether or not it's a good idea for you. And then also long-term care. This is the final thing we'll talk about. Long-term care is not provided by Medicare at all. And a lot of times people conflate Medicare and Medicaid. Very similar phonetically, but very different from what they actually are and what they provide. Medicaid is for people of low resources to provide either for their medical needs or institutionalization in some type of facility. Medicare is your health insurance. Two different things. Medicare doesn't provide anything long-term care. This is something that's really crazy because most people, it's a blind spot in their planning. They've done no planning for long-term care whatsoever. But it's a very certain cost that most of us will face at some point. 70% according to Health and Human Services. And the duration is going to last between 3 and 5 years. Now, if you look at what is equivalent expense in our society, the only thing I can think of is higher education. So you look at 1 year in a semi-private nursing home room. So you're not even in your own room. You're sharing a room. What do you think that 1 year in a semi-private nursing home room costs nationwide? Really close, $94,000. If you want your own room, it's $108,000. You live in Alaska, it's $378,000. So not a great state for long-term care. But higher education costs. You think about the most expensive college in the United States. Does anyone happen to know what it is? It changes every year, but this one's up there a lot. It's one most people have never heard of. Harvey Mudd College. Harvey Mudd College out in Southern California is going to cost you roughly $80,000 per year. And it's $14,000 cheaper. And you think about the planning people do to send their kids for college. There's actresses and actors that literally went to jail with how they were planning for their kids' college. But they do no planning whatsoever for their long-term care. It's just the expense that we overlook, and we don't have a lot of ways to do it. So final area, enrollment. When you have to do this is really important because this is the penalties part. When you turn 65, you get this 7-month window. So it's bracketed with your birth month, 3 months before, 3 months after. You sign up during this time, you don't have any penalties on Part B. Smoke that you're going to start to see around your 65th birthday is you're going to get junk mail. It's going to say sign up for Medicare. If you start seeing that, you should probably give this some thought. But if you're still working, it's a completely different ballgame because you don't have to sign up during this initial enrollment window. If you're still working, you're given a completely different window on when you sign up. And also, if your coverage comes through your spouse and they're still working, and even if you're 65, you don't have to sign up until they lose their coverage. So that's important to consider, the working part of it. There's also the special enrollment window. So you do retire, you lose your credible coverage, you have an 8-month window. 8 months to sign up. That's important to note. You retire, make sure you have coverage in 8 months, but it's also disjointed. If you do go with original Medicare, Part D has a separate signing up enrollment window that's 63 days. So it's not a universal thing. It's something you have to watch out for. And having the right professionals to watch out for you for this is important. But the special enrollment window is important. 8 months, 63 days. I do think if you are still working and you hit your 65th birthday, it's always a good idea 6 months before your 65th birthday, go in and talk to your HR. Because there's a couple important things that you might need to consider. One, when you do retire, you're going to need to stop your HSA contributions because you can't make HSA contributions within 6 months of being on Medicare Part A. You're not allowed to make HSA contributions. That's a gotcha that a lot of people overlook. If you work for a small employer, the way small employers work, and by small, I mean 20 employees. There was a lady that came up to me after a presentation in Phoenix, And it was a presentation on dementia. She came up to me and she looked terrible. She had survived a cancer diagnosis. And basically she said that she was fighting with the insurance company for $254,000 of medical bills. I was like, well, okay, you're over 65. Why didn't Medicare pay for this? Turns out she works for an employer that's under 20 people. When you work for an employer that's under 20 people, Medicare is the primary payer. So she was paying her health insurance premiums to her employer and basically paying for health insurance coverage. It wasn't going to pay a dime until Medicare paid. She never enrolled in Medicare. $254,000 later. I don't know whatever happened to her bills. Hopefully she was able to fight through it and get something paid for. But it's just one of those things, small nuance. 20 employers are under, talk to your HR, make sure there's nothing to do. What they're probably going to tell you is sign up for Part A when you can, because it provides you an enhanced level of coverage and it's free for most people. So that's probably what they're going to tell you to do at age 65. There's also these other enrollment windows through the year that can become really confusing. There's always the annual enrollment window, and that's the one that's about to open up. So October 15th, you have the ability to reanalyze your Medicare coverage and make changes. And that always runs through Pearl Harbor Day. So you hear Pearl Harbor Day, you know, I can no longer make changes to my Medicare starting for next year. Actually, it corresponds with what most people have through their employer, because when you have your benefit elections, it's always in the fall, and it's always effective for the next year. Medicare is the exact same. And then you have this general enrollment window, which runs from January to March. And basically this is, you missed the other enrollment windows, you're signing up late, or you're switching your Medicare Advantage plan. That's more or less what that window's for. But for most people, the annual enrollment window is probably the big one if you don't like the coverage that you have. And then making sure you stop your HSA contributions would be the final thought. Long-term care, we already discussed, but it's a lot. I went through it really fast. So again, I would make sure, talk to a professional, make sure you get the right guidance on it, because I do think the details here are important, and it's very easy to miss some of those really odd rules that may impact your situation to a great degree.
Very good. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Good job. Ryan, that was great. Thank you so much. There is a lot to know about Medicare. We've got two paraplanners in the back. Ask them the tough questions. They're 22, they're right out of college, they're ready to answer them. No, I'm just kidding. Also in the back, Tom Crennan, come on up here. Tom has been in this industry for a long time, working with Medicare and individual insurance. He is a great expert. We should be careful with that. Yeah. We do have insurance, but I don't know if we have that kind of insurance. If we trip over that cable, we could be in big trouble. In any event, Tom has helped a lot of our clients with Medicare. And Ryan, you are free to answer questions as well. I thought if you have any comments you want to make right at the beginning, go for it, and then we just ask you questions. So everybody at home, type them into your Zoom bar, and we'll feed them here, and everybody here in the audience just fire away and ask questions. And so Tom,
Ryan did a super good job covering everything. So, I mean, that's really good. I'd throw a few things out because yours was kind of on a national basis and maybe a little bit different for Colorado. One of them is that the Medicare supplement premiums, which a little bit higher in Colorado, probably around $140, $150 a month. And then those go up over time. Those will go up as you get older, and they'll get up to $300, $350 a month just for the Medicare supplement on things. And then at some point you look at that and you say, well, I'm paying $300 a month for my Medicare supplement. Should I go to a Medicare Advantage plan, which has zero premium and has a max out of pocket of like $3,500? And they're not the same, they're different, but that's a pretty common thing that happens as you get older. You'll kind of go like, well, man, that Medicare supplement was great. You get to choose all kinds of doctors all over the United States. But these Medicare, mostly HMOs, but there's PPOs out there too. But the Medicare Advantage plans, that zero premium, you maybe get some vision and dental, hearing aids, things like that. You get these other extra coverages. They don't cost you anything. Right now, United Healthcare's Plan 2 here in Denver has a $3,500 max out of pocket. So as you get older, a lot of people will look at that and say, hey, maybe I should switch over. And there's pluses and minuses. It's a complicated decision, but there's thoughts on that. So just kind of throw that one out at you on things.
And silver sneakers.
Silver sneakers. So you can, I sound like a United Healthcare person, but I work with all of them. But United Healthcare used to have silver sneakers. They went to Renew Active. But you can get that either on the Medicare supplement side with United Healthcare or on the Medicare Advantage side. So you can actually get Anthem has it, and Humana. So those three have silver sneakers in effect, or an equivalent on the Medicare supplement side. Pretty much every Medicare Advantage plan has some type of silver sneakers.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, there's lots of freebies. They're starting to give away money. There's Medicare Advantage give back plans, like you'll actually make $100 a month for signing up for a plan that costs you $0. Anyway,
That's not bad.
yeah, that's another one. Yep.
Can you, and Ryan, jump in too if you'd like. Can you explain how Medicare does and doesn't provide for a nursing home?
Ryan hit it right on. So the simple answer is Medicare does not provide for nursing homes. It's Medicaid does, and Medicaid has all these buy-down provisions, and you guys know this way better than I do, but I think they just changed it so maybe you need to get rid of most of your money like 7 years ahead of time or something. Yeah, it's getting longer, so they want you to have your spend down earlier if you're going to try to use Medicaid to be in a nursing home. So just kind of know that that's going on with things.
So no help.
No help. I'll be slightly, just to clarify anything, but Medicare does cover what's called, I don't know, it's the nursing homes, the rehabilitation nursing homes. Where are you going? Yeah. Skilled nursing facilities. Exactly right.
That's on both plans, Advantage and normal.
Yes. So yeah, they always cover skilled nursing facilities. They usually cover it for 100 days. It depends what plan you're on. There's some cost to it or there's no cost to it. But skilled nursing facilities, you are expected to get out of the nursing facility. At that nursing home, you're not expected to get out of there. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. But
So if you have a major surgery, maybe you get into a skilled nursing, the clock starts ticking.
the clock starts ticking. You've got basically 100 days. The rumor I hear on the 100 days, if you really need it more than 100 days, you can go back in the hospital for 3 days and it resets the clock for another 100 days. But so there's a little bit of ways around it. But yeah, just know skilled nursing facility, which is covered by Medicare, and just nursing homes are Medicaid.
Skilled nursing homes don't have a lot, or skilled nursing facilities don't have a lot of beds, is at least what I've seen with friends.
Is that right? They're running low on.
Yeah, so you need it, but you can't get it, so you stay in the hospital. And then...
If I had a 2 cents comment on Medicare, it's great. I sell regular health insurance. It's great coverage, generally speaking. I think most people that come off a regular plan and go on to Medicare will be very pleased with their coverage, whether they go with a Medicare supplement or go with a Medicare Advantage plan. It's pretty doggone good. But that's just me.
That's what I'm hearing for the most of our retirees as well.
Yeah.
A question about Medicare handling inpatient care versus outpatient care. I've heard they do one and not the other. That might be the same question.
They do both. So on inpatient care inside a hospital, the normal for something like that, you go in the hospital, it depends on the plan, but about $250 a day for the first 5 days is typically the cost, and then everything's covered after that. So that's pretty good. It's going to be a little higher if you do a PPO plan. If you do outpatient surgery, like you can get knees replaced now on outpatient surgery, it's usually like a copay of about $300 on Medicare Advantage. Now, if you have a Medicare supplement, remember you pay that $233 to the doctor at the beginning of the year, whenever you use that. And then after that, typically speaking, everything's covered after that with like a Plan G Medicare supplement, so you don't have any other costs with that. So yeah.
I mean, those are pretty good examples that give me a little bit of. Any good resource to help me figure out which medicines are covered by this plan versus that plan? That seems like a real gotcha if you're on some prescription medicines that you absolutely need.
I actually think Medicare Part D is the most complicated part of Medicare. If you want me to, I can jump on here and I'll do one really fast for you.
Yeah, sure.
Is that all right?
Will it go there?
Can you just pull up a browser? Are you on the internet?
I am.
Okay.
We had a demo, a live demo.
Would you mind pulling up Medicare.gov? Just it's the official website of the government. And
Drive.
oh, okay. Let me see if I can get at this here. All right. Okay, there. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so you come down here to Medicare.gov. You do. Yeah, it wants you to do that, and then you do. It says find health and drug plans. I'm not real gung ho on it. I'm finding the health plans, but I am pretty gung ho on the the drug plan. Drug plans are crazy complicated, kind of. But just know some of them are cheap. Anyway, I'm going to put in a Denver zip code just for the heck of it. So you put in your zip code. You say, let's just keep it simple. We'll do Part D. We'll do this one here. We'll say find plans. We'll come in here and say, I don't get any extra help. And you'll hit next. And you'll say, yes, I do want to see the drugs, the cost of the drugs. And then right here. So then you build your list of drugs. I had a question that was written. It was on a Alzheimer's drug. And I don't know. I think it was something, I tried to look it up to find out which one they were talking about. But if you type in the first 3 letters or so, it'll usually find your drug. So this one happens to be Rexulti, happened to be the drug. It's an Alzheimer's drug. And then I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to add that drug. It asks you what your dosages are going to be here. You say, add this to my drug list. Okay. And then we're going to say we're done adding drugs. I put in a Denver zip code. It says, show me all the pharmacies within 5 miles. So what's interesting, this is how sophisticated the program is. It not only knows all the drugs, but it knows the cost of those drugs under about 27 different plans at your local pharmacy. So it's pretty interesting on how it does on this one. Anyway, so I'm going to say, I'm just going to choose Walgreens and Safeway real fast. And then it's going to come back and it's going to analyze like these 27 different plans. And it's going to say, okay, based on these plans, and that being a pretty expensive drug, it came up with this particular one, this Elixir RX Cure PDP. The cost of the plan is $43.50 a month, which is high. There's plans as cheap as $3.70 out there right now. But with that in, what it does is it looks at the cost of the plan and the cost of the medication on there, adds them together, looks at your total annual cost for it and says, we think this one's number 1 at $16.13. And I'll go into it a little bit. And then the next one, it said, we think that this AARP one, this Medicare RX Preferred, is good. Notice how much more expensive it is, $129. But the $18.88 isn't that much. That's the second best plan. The overall cost is not that much more. It's just that the cost of the plan is more. So that's the first thing you look at. So you should have never asked me about Part D. It's just tons to it. But and then you look at your plan details here on this. So this is for the cheapest one. So not only does it tell you this, but it will tell you what the cost of that drug is. So this is kind of an overview. So this is kind of interesting. These are pretty close. They're not always real close. I put in Walgreens and Safeway, and it says, well, they're about the same either way, is what it's saying. But it'll tell you what the cost is at that pharmacy that's local to you. It's not the best star rating I've ever seen on a plan. But anyway, and you can go into more details, and you can see what the actual cost of the drug is and stuff. But anyway, I would say Medicare.gov is a great place to look at.
Yeah, great job.
Okay. So
I had no idea we had resources like that.
Yeah.
That's great. Any questions? Other questions? Yeah.
Who has ALS, and he's recently was in the hospital. And one of the nurses said to my sister, if you don't have a supplement plan to your Advantage plan, you're in big trouble if you're over 65. Is there a supplemental plan for Advantage?
So the answer is, there are some standalone policies. You can get some standalone policies that will say, we'll pay you, like $300 a day for every day that you're in the hospital. So there's what's called critical illness and accident policies, which you can add on top of theirs. But Medicare Advantage policies are a complete policy, as are Medicare supplement, along with Medicare. You can have some extra hospital indemnity plans and stuff.
They might have been talking about a special needs policy. ALS may be a special.
Oh, actually, I think that's a good point. ALS just recently has become a special. So there's a couple things. It used to be dialysis, kidney failure, and ALS, I do believe, actually falls into a category where you can get
through the Advantage plan or through the standard?
I think it falls over to Medicare, where you go in through it would be a special enrollment period where you could go and find a policy just specifically for that.
Can you go out in the market to find one?
Medicare, I'm not going to sound like I'm Medicare.gov. I sell these things, so you're supposed to talk to me. But anyway, if you look at Medicare.gov, it will show you all the plans on there. And but the ALS ones are there's some really bizarre. There's institutional plans, which talked about if you're in institutionalized care. What's funny with ALS, I mean, it's funny. I know some people. It's anyway. It's the issue is even on a regular plan, your max out of pocket's $3,500. You could be in the hospital for a year, and your max limit. If you're on a regular Medicare Advantage or Medicare Supplement, either one of those, you're going to be fine.
Okay, good.
I mean, so I don't think it's huge issue either way. I mean, what's been interesting is some of the special plans have actually been going away because the regular plans are getting so good
Coverage.
that you just don't really need it that much. Yeah. So, okay. There's some special plans that have to do with Medicaid that are different, but
I have two questions. The first is about the max out of pocket.
Right.
If I'm understanding it correctly, that the max out of pocket is not per household, it's per individual, unlike
Right.
my family's health insurance plan right now.
right. And a low max out of pocket is about $3,500. That's about the lowest. Average is probably $4,000, $5,000. A PPO policy is probably about $5,700. And the thing to remember on the max out of pocket is that's for hospitals and doctors. That's Part A and B of Medicare. Part D, your drug card, is a completely separate item. And it actually right now has no max out of pocket on it. There's a limit where you only pay there's all these, I tell you, there's 5 stages to Medicare Part D. And you get into the last catastrophic case, you pay about 4% of the cost of the drugs. That's supposed to change in 2025, where they're going to actually put a hard limit of $2,000. It's supposed to be the max out of pocket on Part D in 2025. And then all the Part D premiums are supposed to go up. So it's kind of a mixed blessing because the carrier will pay for some of that. But yeah, there's a hard max out of pocket on there. You do have to stay in network if you're on like a Medicare Advantage plan. If you're on a Medicare supplement, as long as you're seeing a Medicare accepted facility, your max out of pocket is really $233 plus your drug card, whatever you get on your drug card. So but you pay for it, but you get way less max out of pocket.
The second part of my question, if I miss my window to get into Medicare, the penalty stays with me forever, correct? I'm going to be paying a higher penalty that never goes away?
That is correct. And there's 2 separate penalties, just to be clear. So there's one Ryan mentioned, which is the Part D penalty, which is it's 32 cents roughly for every month that you delay. So if you delay 10 months, you pay an extra $3.20 for your plan for the rest of your life. The Medicare Part B one has a penalty on it. It's a little bit different. You have a year basically to get it. It doesn't have as tight a window on it. You have to be without a year before you get it. But that one's 10%. That's right, of the cost on there. Yeah.
Are there any stats, because that sounds scary, I'm paying a penalty forever. And also, I thought it was interesting that if I'm a high income earner and I'm paying those higher premiums, that unless I take action to negotiate a lower premium because my income changed, that I will continue to pay that higher amount. Are there any sort of...
They should re-look at that every year. They look at the most recent tax return you have. So as your tax returns change,
They look back 2 years. So the next year that number just drops, then it will change the next year, but it gives you no relief unless you file that form.
If I'm the person on Medicare, I do not have to actively take that step. They will adjust.
If it's January and you're paying $500 in premium, but your income changed to where you'd be paying $164, you probably want to actively change that.
Okay.
But then what he's saying is the next year they would look at your
So, yeah, absolutely. So the form, which I thought was excellent that we presented, yeah, if you have a change where your income went way down, then you want to say, hey guys, my income went down, here's the reasons, and then they will hopefully adjust it for you, which they will. But if you're just, everything's kind of cruising along and let's say, you actually made more money or something like that, then you just want to leave it alone and, let them figure out what's going on. Which happens with people, they'll sell a property or something like that and have a high income year. And so.
I have a question about physical therapy on both of the plans. I have an Advantage plan.
Okay.
And think $25 copay doesn't add up, but it can. So is there one better than another? I really think I have Advantage. I like it, but that was such a big thing for me that I'm thinking about going back to the regular. And as we age, physical therapy is a big thing.
Oh, no, I agree with you. And your point is excellent. And it kind of goes to Ryan's point where it's kind of a personal decision. If you've got a lot of things going on, and so this is me, and it depends how many times you do physical therapy, but you're going to compare that to what is your premium going to be on a Medicare supplement policy. The things that are a little bit scary about med subs is that when you first turn 65, you're guaranteed issue. You can get them, no questions asked. But now that you're on a Medicare Advantage plan and you've been on that plan for a year or two, then at that point you're medically underwritten if you want to go back into a med sub. And if they have different guidelines for different plans, but depending,
You may not qualify.
you may not qualify to get on a med sub.
Those premiums
If you go back,
go to that stuff.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, med subs right now, and it depends. What's interesting, Denver is kind of the most expensive area, and the boonies are actually like $110. They're kind of $110 a month for a plan G, but yeah, it's about $140. And it depends on whether you're male or female. Women are cheaper, so anyway, but that's kind of it.